Don't let the belt and the record-breaking title reign fool you. I'm nothing more than a wrestling fan. A wrestling fan with a good chin and Nobel Prize-winning genitals. We're all just fans at the end of the day, and it's genuinely hard, especially these days, to judge what our relationship with WWE should be. Should we be telling them what we want to see and they provide, or should we be giving them a chance to tell us a story without immediately shouting it down? Well, none of us are actual bookers, face actual bookers' challenges, but as fans, we know when a main event is bungled. After all, we had to watch it. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are the 10 times WWE got the main event of WrestleMania wrong. Number 10, Orton vs Triple H. Randy Orton and Triple H never really stood a chance at WrestleMania 25, which is not the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania. That's 26. Your wedding isn't the first anniversary of your wedding. Semantics rage. First off, the men hit each other's finishes on each other straight into the match, which popped the crowd but then lost them when it descended into less exciting moves. Also, the feud was full of home invasions and father-in-law kicking and wife kissing. It should have been a no-holds-barred match, but instead, Triple H would lose the title if he was DQ'd. That's the extra special stipulation. I mean, I guess there's a tension game there, but still. Finally, HBK and Taker put on a match of the year about an hour before, and after 30 minutes of edge-of-your-seat beauty, the fans were just too burned out by the time Trips and Orton came out for their stipulation-neutered match. Number 9, John Cena vs The Rock. 2. Once in a lifetime, they said, lying to our poor little faces. Look, Vince, look at this poor wrestling fan. Look at his innocent little 5-year-old face. Deceived. Utterly. So John Cena and The Rock was always planned to be a trilogy. Confrontation at 27, once in a lifetime at 28, twice in a lifetime at 29. And see, the problem with booking that far in advance is it doesn't quite take into account what happens if you, oh I don't know, make a new star in the meantime. That new star was CM Punk, an angry man with angry fans. Now don't get me wrong, CM Punk versus The Undertaker was the saving grace of a fairly crap Mania, but if CM Punk had been put into a triple threat with Cena and The Rock, then it might have combated fan apathy with the main event, the novelty that had lost its shine. But also, and this is pure speculation on my part, giving Punk the WrestleMania main event that he'd always craved might have convinced him to stick around a little while longer. Number 8, Sid versus The Undertaker. From one main event that was repeated back-to-back to one that didn't, but should have been. WrestleMania 13 was a fairly rubbish WrestleMania if you ignore that pesky match of the year between Bret Hart and Steve Austin. It was capped off by Sid versus The Undertaker, and it's fair to say that the match was a snooze, with the two giants having zero chemistry and almost zero storyline going in. That's because the match was supposed to be Hart versus Michaels, the rematch from WrestleMania 12, with Bret going over this time. Current champ Shawn Michaels wasn't happy about that and cited an injury, walking away from the company, forgetting his smile as he left. It's not exactly the booker's fault that Shawn wouldn't play ball, but even Hart versus Undertaker would have been better than the main event we got. Or just, I don't know, have Bret and Austin go on last. I mean, why not? Number 7, Bret Hart versus YOKOZUNA. Ask a wrestling fan what the worst WrestleMania of all time was, and if they're young, they'll say 27. We'll get to that. And if they're older, they'll say number 9. The Caesars Palace Mania had a lot working against it. It was more of a live-action cartoon than a wrestling show. It had Giant Gonzalez. It was in the daytime, which was really weird. Worst of all was the 1-2 punch of shite main event. First up was Bret Hart losing his championship against the impossibly big YOKOZUNA. Hart could normally have an amazing match with anyone, but he struggled against a blown-up Samoan who reportedly just skipped a huge chunk of the Bret's comeback sequel because he was gassed. Hart was screwed out of the belt, then out came Hulk Hogan for a baffling squash match where he overthrew the Japanoan star with ease, further sticking it to Bret and his failing effort. Number 6, Hogan versus Sid. How? How did this go so wrong? When the man who had embodied wrestling in the South for over a decade, multi-time NWA and WCW champion Ric Flair, joined the WWF in 1991, fans all over the world prepared for WrestleMania 8 to have the greatest main event of all time. Finally, they were going to see it. Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan. However, after a run of house shows didn't bring in record numbers, they went with Hogan versus Sid Justice instead. Sid was tall, blonde, tick-tick to Vinnie Mac, except Hogan wouldn't be beaten and Sid had to be heel. What happened next was a limp match marred by a botched run-in from Papa Shango. It all makes the Flair-Hogan match seem that much more of a tragic loss. Number 5, Hogan versus Slaughter. Perfect trilogy for the Hulkster. Way to go, brother. But actually, seriously, nothing against the Hulkster with this one. He belonged in the main event of WrestleMania 7, no doubt. The problem lay with his dance partner. That would be Iraqi sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter. Vince McMahon said in an interview that when he devised the Sergeant Slaughter heel turn, he didn't expect America to fully go to war. Well, they did, and it was a little bit uncomfortable. WWE claimed they had to move arenas from a big one to a smaller one out of security fears that incensed Americans might bomb the arena. In reality, the angle was drawing much lower numbers, and they weren't going to fill their old venue. The good flag versus bad flag angle was incendiary, but the heat was awkward and crude and turned a lot of people off. Had WWE gone with their original plan, a rematch between Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan from WrestleMania 6 for the big belt, who knows? Number 4, Bam Bam Bigelow versus Lawrence Taylor. The main event, Sweet baby Jesus. Celebrity involvement is written into WrestleMania's DNA, and to be fair, Mr. T was in the very first WrestleMania main event of all time, but he had 3 other wrestlers to make him look good. The main event of WrestleMania 11, Bam Bam Bigelow, the flame-tattooed cannonball, versus NFL legend Lawrence Taylor. Those 2 men clashed in the main event over the WWE Championship match between Diesel and HBK. Couple of reasons. 1, Diesel's run as WWF champ wasn't going well, drawing poor houses. Number 2, McMahon didn't trust Michaels as a main event draw yet. And 3, he wanted some mainstream cred. Ironically, the only buzz that the match drew was negative attention for Taylor getting involved with a quote, "phony sport, screw you football." The match between Bam Bam and Taylor was better than anyone thought it would be, but the title should have gone on last. Say whatever you want about Diesel's run, but it's the title, for God's sake. Number 3, The Miz versus John Cena. WrestleMania 27, gosh, it was bad. I mean, gosh it was. It was bad, gosh, it was bad. CM Punk main events, 0. Miz main events, 1. Gosh. Look, I don't want to dump on The Miz. Sure, he's a bit too much and has the most slappable face in the world except me, maybe. But as a main eventer of WrestleMania, well, you can see how much they valued him by having most of the story of the match be about Cena versus The Rock. You had Undertaker on the card, WWE. The planned match with Sting fell through, so just imagine if it had been Cena versus the dead man. Streak versus the champ, the man who can't lose versus the man who can't be seen. It would have been a one-match show, sure, but what a match. Number 2, Triple H versus Rock versus Foley versus Big Show. WrestleMania 16 had only one singles match, and it was a cat fight between the Cat and Terry Runnels. Yep. The whole show was an unbridled clusterfuck of an event that admittedly had a very excellent ladder match in it. The main event was Triple H versus The Rock. Oh, awesome, the 2 biggest stars in the company, and Mick Foley in the Big Show, and there was a McMahon in every corner. Now, don't get me wrong, I love me some Mick Foley, and the fact he got a WrestleMania main event before he retired, sort of, was amazing. But it should have been The Rock versus Triple H. If the main event of the next pay-per-view Backlash was anything to go by, it would have been sensational, but hey, at least we got that, I guess. Overcrowded, overbooked, and underwhelming, the main event was WrestleMania 2000 in a nutshell. And number 1, Jericho versus Triple H. At WrestleMania 18, it was a perfect storm of poorly built main event with a semi-main that simply exhausted the crowd. The Rock versus Hulk Hogan was outstanding, with the Toronto crowd embracing Hogan to overwhelming levels. The crowd screamed for the entire bout. By the time the main event came around, they were ready for a nap. For starters, there was no pre-match video package to hype up the crowd. Instead, there was a drowning pool concert, for God's sake. Second up, Jericho had been booked atrociously in the lead-up, playing second fiddle to Stephanie McMahon. Like The Miz faded into the background behind The Rock and John Cena, so too did Y2J behind Trips and his demonic misses. At that point, WWE should have accepted what they'd done and put Rock and Hogan on last. Now, don't get me wrong, as a smarky internet fan, I think the title should go on last, but when the planets align, even I have to admit that some matches are just too big to follow. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter here. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.